What's up, guys? Ben here with Capwise. Joining me, as usual, Rob Veno to break down Week 5 of college football. Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing good today, Ben. I can't believe we're into week 5 already, but
I know it sounds like it's flying. Almost halfway, but still, I mean, the season it comes quick and it happens quickly.
yeah. When you think about it, I mean, we're talking right now doing this podcast. It's not even we're not even out of September yet, and we're heading into week 5.
I
So
know.
it goes really quick, and we got some good games ahead of us to talk about this week for sure.
Yeah. So before we hop on into Week 5, how did last Saturday treat you?
Last Saturday was last Saturday was a little rough. There were some real good points, and it's you know what? It's a repeat of week 3, week 2, week 1. I've been about 50-50 the whole way this year. But Texas Tech over the total was the highlight of the day. Texas hangs 70 on Texas Tech. We didn't have any problem there. I'm trying to recall what went wrong. You get so far into this week, you forget last week. But we had a
That's good
couple of
though, because
yeah.
Tuesday it already seems like it's at that point where we're at now, it's like you kind of have an idea of what you're playing already.
Yeah, NFL wound up being better yesterday. Last night capped off a really good week with our top play, which was Dallas Philadelphia over the total, over 51.5, got themselves to 62. So NFL one more time, real good. College football, we're still, still on that ship that's middling here, looking to break out of that and have a big week this week.
Well, Week 5, it sounds like a good time to have a week. What do you say?
I think we're ready, buddy. I think we're passing on good info every week that we
Yeah,
do
I,
this.
I think so too. I mean, I've had plenty of people come to me and they're like, "Hey, great tip," and
Yeah.
sometimes you forget what games you talk about and what information you give out because there's just so many different games and angles you're covering. So, well, let's just hop on into the first one. And
Sure.
this is an interesting game because both these teams were two teams that, in my eyes, were kind of looking to this game, right, with their last week's opponents. Both teams not covering in those spots, and this is Indiana on the road against Penn State. Penn State's currently 12.5 point favorite, moved up. Looks like I saw an opener around 10. A little surprised I saw a move there. Maybe, I mean, I can understand why it moved, and then a total of 53.5. So let's first just talk about that move. 2.5 points off the opener.
Yeah, I think it's based on current perception, right? I think people are um, beginning to come around to Penn State, and people are beginning to back off of Indiana, which it didn't take but less than a month for that to happen because during the spring and summer, everybody was on Indiana. Sometimes perception
Mm-hmm.
isn't always right, Ben, and maybe there's a little bit of overvalue in this particular case. We'll find out, but I'll say this: it is a probably the one game that Penn State circled in red. It's a major revenge spot. These two teams played season
Last
opener
year,
last year. That was the
yeah.
overtime game where, James Franklin took a lot of criticism ahead 21-20 late in the fourth quarter, got Indiana to turn it over on downs, and then immediately scored a touchdown with about a minute 40 left. And people were thinking, what are you doing? Why didn't you run the clock out? And Indiana came back and tied that game 28, sent it to overtime. And of course, the final 2 point conversion was the controversial Michael Penix play where was he in, was he out? Nobody really knows, but the referee said it was good. So Indiana wins, and it sort of set Penn State into a spiral last year, right? They don't win a game for 5 weeks. So I think revenge, and it's the
They're ready
second
to take
time.
Franklin out of. They're ready to fire him. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, the alumni, as it is in most of the I'll call Penn State elite football wise. They've certainly got a tradition where you could probably label them that. But when you have the fan bases that these types of universities have, it doesn't take much for them to get irate. And this is going to be the second time in 3 weeks, Ben, where they have a prime time, 7:30 at night. This one's not a whiteout; it's called a stripe out. So Penn State going to all the gimmicks with their nighttime starts. So the crowd, we saw them
Yeah.
against Auburn 2 weeks ago, right? Fired up. They'll be the same way here with the revenge factor, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so when I look at this Penn State team, um, I'm not sold on them, to be completely honest. And the reason why is in that Wisconsin game, Wisconsin probably wins that game more times than not the way the game kind of played out. They just didn't convert in the red zone. And then I also look at the Auburn game, great performance, but the wideout, it's different. And Bo Nix hasn't had any success on the road. But, we have to give him a win. You have to upgrade him for that. We can't ever take anything away from a team covering and winning, right? And then Villanova, it's kind of a weird spot. I'm not surprised that they didn't cover because of this game that we're talking about now. But I'm still kind of on the fence with Penn State. I don't know. Am I in the minority there, Rob?
Well, I think if you dig deep into the numbers after 4 games, Ben, your concerns would be legit about Penn State, right? They still can't run the football, and some of that has been masked. They got outgained by Wisconsin, and total plays were like plus 40 for Wisconsin, but Penn State came up with a couple of key interceptions in that fourth quarter to seal the deal. But certainly it's not a team that's blowing you away offensively. I know over the weekend, the highlights from the Villanova game, if just watch television and look at the highlights, and people tending to think that Penn State's back and look at it, but it's Villanova. And I know Villanova's a good FCS team, believe me. And Noah Kane didn't play, but had only one carry. He was rested in that game, their top running back. But still, you've got to run for more than 3.5 a pop against Villanova. You just do.
Yeah.
And they haven't done that against anybody, Ben, unless it's Ball State. They haven't run the football. Didn't run it against Auburn. Didn't run it against Wisconsin. Didn't run it last week. So it's an issue because Indiana, if you dig into their statistics pretty deep, they're a good run defense. I think it's kind of a mirror image type deal because you can say the same thing about Indiana. They're already off of key losses to Cincinnati, Iowa, games where Michael Penix against tough defenses hasn't shown up. And how about his numbers? And if we just take those 2 games, the 2 best teams he's played, Cincinnati and Iowa, he's 31 of 71 throwing the football for only 380 yards, 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That's 43.7% completions and 6 interceptions. And Penn State can play pass defense, but you got to run the ball first to back them off. And even though they've got USC transfer Stephen Carr at running back, and Ty Freifogel is a good wide receiver, and Peyton Hendershot's one of the best tight ends in the nation. But Indiana hasn't done anything against good defenses, so it's kind of the same on both sides. Neither one can run. Which one can pass the best here, right? Do you have your faith in Sean Clifford, or do you have your faith in a medically repaired Michael Penix Jr., which really, to me, and I don't know that I'm correct on this is just personal opinion, it seems to me like he's not the same player off of injury. And he's sustained some tough injuries the last 3 years, so maybe he's playing himself into shape. I'm not sure. Penn State hasn't allowed more than 20 points all season long. Not good for Indiana, but it's that, the elephant in the room is always the point spread, right?
Yeah.
12.5 points just seems, it's the great equalizer. And to me, if Indiana, who's been through 2 tough games already, Iowa, Cincinnati, so this really shouldn't faze them much. If they can avoid critical mistakes and sort of weather the storm, as we always say in these games where you're on the road, 12.5, they might be able to make that number cover.
Yeah, I'm curious about this spread because I almost feel like this is one of those spots where even if this opened up, let's say at 11.5, I think you would have seen a pretty good movement on a line, or at least some of the same action, because it's not to that key number of 14, but it just almost seems like the market is just kind of given up on Indiana and Penix, which maybe deservingly so. But to be completely honest, Rob, I kind of lean with Indiana, but I want to see if this can get closer to 14. I don't think it gets there, but if I can get a 13, I might take a stab potentially at Indiana. I might do it.
I think a lot falls on the head coach, Tom Allen, here, who, as we all know, the players love him. He's a great motivator. And it's not a Chicken Little, the sky is falling type of scenario for Indiana. They've played 1 Big Ten game so far. That's it.
Yeah.
This is a divisional match. If they beat Penn State, the way we've seen Ohio State, they're right back in it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So all the marbles are on the table for Indiana as well. I would expect them to come motivated, Ben. The question just being, these 6 interceptions, and 2 of them went for pick 6 against Iowa. It's a little bit scary giving up defensive points, but I still think the number's inflated a little bit. I don't think Penn State, I don't think the normal number, my power rating showed Penn State 10.5, which means that bookmakers see it coming, right? They see it coming. The people are going to come with Penn State money. They know.
And wait till the public gets on this too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think the public's betting Indiana.
No, all you really have to say is Penn State stripe out or whiteout, and people are going to jump. Oh my God, they're going to kill them.
What do we got going on in the crowd today? Okay, well, I'm betting it.
I'm betting.
Anything on the total? I lean under a little bit, but it's moving the other way.
Well, for college football, major college football nowadays, it's kind of low.
Yeah.
But all the stuff we just talked about just indicates that it could be a out-and-out slugfest, or it could be one of those games where, big pass plays rule the day because that's all that they get off. You got to be able to protect your quarterback, but there's good receivers on both sides. Jahan Dotson is an NFL receiver, right? And Parker Washington is faster than Jahan Dotson. So Penn State's got 2 legit deep threats. Indiana, I talked about theirs, Freifogel and Hendershot, legit threats.
That's a tight number.
It's a tight number, but I will say this: at 52.5, for those looking maybe to play this, 52 is a key number. A lot of games land on 52, 31-21. That sounds like it could possibly be a final score, right? 31-21, 31-20.
Absolutely.
That's an under. That's an under right now. So
absolutely. So let's move on to the next game, and I'm going to need some help with this one to understand why this line is where it's at. Little fishy here, but it's Nevada on the road against Boise State. Boise State only getting 6.5, or favored by 6.5. Totals at 58.5. Why isn't this over a touchdown? Let's talk about that.
Well, I think to start the year, Nevada was the team. Again, every conference has one. They were kind of the bandwagon team. Carson Strong, NFL first-round quarterback. They're going to be the team that takes down Boise this year. Hasn't really worked out that way early for them. Situationally, Ben, I guess, and I don't know that this is accounted for in the point spread, but Nevada's had 2 weeks to prepare. They had the bye week last week. Boise had that crazy 10 a.m. start in Logan, Utah last week where they played Utah State. We're going to dive into that in a second. Power ratings, I'm trying to look here real quick to see where I made the line because I didn't write it down, but I have it in my spreadsheet here.
We actually have
this game to be
we have
7.5.
Arizona State next, but we can do the Utah State one if you want instead. I'm happy to do either.
Yeah, this one showed 7.5 Boise. I'll say this real quick. Nevada, key injury here. Elijah Cooks, senior wide receiver, gone. But I don't know that it's that devastating because Nevada's got a host of receivers, and the kid who's going to step in for him, Troy Horton, actually second on the team in yards per game. So this is a throwing football team. They don't run it, and it's kind of – you wish they could run it in this case because Boise hasn't stopped the run. I'll just give you some quick numbers here. They played UCF, gave up 271 rushing yards. They played Oklahoma State, gave up 256 rushing yards. They played Utah State last week, 249 rushing yards, 6.4 a carry. This is minusing out the sack yardage, guys. So
and even UTEP, they were running on them earlier in that game at times too, and then they were down, and then that was it. So even UTEP at times.
Yeah. So you take a look at last week in that game. Utah State goes out and gets 443 total yards and only scores 3 points. Just to put that into context, it took Utah State gaining almost 148 yards to score a point, 147.7 to score 1 point. Yeah. That's, it's a mirage. It doesn't happen often. 5 of Utah State's first 7 drives in that game all got into Boise territory. Picked off at the Boise 47, turnover on downs at the Boise 35, miss a field goal, Boise 24, get picked again at the Boise 17, and miss another field goal from the Boise 18. They had 5 chances to score in the first half, wind up with 0.
That's almost impossible to to not come away with points in those 5.
And if you saw their kicker, you'd understand why they shouldn't even be trying
Yeah.
field goals. They should be going for it every time. But the point being here that score is a little bit misleading, 27-3.
Mhm.
Boise was good on offense, and they came up with some stops, but I don't know that they can do it consistently against Nevada. Like I say, if I thought Nevada could run the football with Tua Tawa, who has been a good running back in the past, but they just haven't gotten on track yet. If they run it a little, I bet you they cover this game. They've played 2 really good defenses, Cal and K-State. And against those 2 teams, they threw for over 300 against both. They defeated Cal.
Mm-hmm.
They lost to Kansas State. So the Boise State team, maybe they can throw on a little bit, but you have to run it first. I think the underdog might be live here, Ben. I think situationally, again, you have a team with 2 weeks of preparation time for their biggest game of the year. They're one of the biggest teams in the Mountain West. And you have the other side, like I say, coming off what was really a hyped game. It wasn't CBS Sports Network. It was the real CBS that they got coverage on. That's why they started at 10 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a good point there. And, I look at this Boise State team, and I've followed this trend throughout the years. And at home, they typically get so much public love. So seeing this number at -6.5, I wouldn't be surprised if this moves to a 7, because I kind of feel like the Sharps have hit Nevada a little bit, but I'm sure some of them are waiting to get a 7. I don't know. Do you see it getting up there with the public kind of backing Boise in the blue turf?
Well, in the old days, I would say no, because when sports books were only in Las Vegas, Nevada would be a very popular team.
Good point.
And now that you have so many offshores, the popularity doesn't really come into play. The Raider fans that cross the border on Friday afternoon after work, the Cardinal fans, the Charger fan, blah, blah,
or
blah.
Or like you would get like the USC action.
Right.
Like the LA guys would come into Vegas and pound the Cali
Absolutely.
school. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that just doesn't exist to the same extent anymore because we have legalized sports betting so many places. But, these things generally are a popularity contest with the public money, and Boise would be the more popular side right now. I happen to think that, Nevada's got a real chance here. So we'll see. Like I say, they got to run it a little, though. Otherwise, they won't have any chance if they can't run it.
They do, and the total moved from 56 to 58.5. Any thoughts on that?
Well, they'll want to play fast pace, Nevada, because they run that air raid style system. Boise couldn't have played a team that ran a faster pace than they did in Utah State last week. So that could be another angle here, Ben. Could they be gassed from such a fast-paced game with their defense last week and then, run out of gas in this game second half maybe? It's a legitimate point.
That is a really good point, and I think we had someone a few weeks back, if you recall, if they were asking about pace of play and how many plays does a player get tired. And, we kind of said, hey, it's more about are they playing a fast pace for a majority of the game? But I think that now that we're getting into game 4, game 5, game 6, you could start to see a little bit of that. Of course, it shouldn't be your main handicap, but I think it can definitely support that side if you're on it already.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Boise's also played Central Florida. So they've played 2 extreme tempos already, which could be problematic as we get deeper into the season. But we'll see. I might take my chances that the Boise State run defense, from what I've seen, has been shoddy enough to think that Nevada can run for $110, $120, which might be all they need, and keep this game within a field goal.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, and I know, both teams they had a lot of hype going into the season, and it seems like Nevada's still holding it a little bit. So this is going to be a big spot for them to see if they are going to be a contender in that conference. So let's move on into the last one. Are you cool with Arizona State, UCLA?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. -3 is what I'm showing UCLA. 55.5 UCLA. The first 2 games of the season, we had some high hopes for these guys after their performance beating LSU, and then things have went south just a little bit. But hey, it's a Chip Kelly team. That's to be expected, I guess. Totals at 55.5. Arizona State coming off a pretty dominant performance against Colorado, but Brendan Lewis right now in the Buffs, they're struggling heavily on offense. So -3. What are your thoughts on this one? Does UCLA have a bounce back spot here?
Well, they played pretty well last week against Stanford, right? They win that one 35-24. Game gets, depending upon when you got it, Ben, you could have bet over and won because I think it opened 57.5 and then climbed all the way to 60 by game's end. So 59 sits kind of in the middle of that. Bookmakers never like when games end that way. But
Yeah.
you could have got caught on the wrong side, too, if you bet late and got to 60. But they seem to be pretty good. Dorian Thompson-Robinson got hurt in that game, but came back and played and is back at practice this week. Yesterday we were hearing that he's questionable. Today, no problem. It was a non-throwing shoulder, and he said he gutted it out during the game, and it's not giving him any trouble. Now he's back at practice, so that's good. For the Arizona State side, what's good is Diamante Trainum is going to be back for them at running back. Didn't play last week against Colorado, missed it with a foot injury. So both of these teams in pretty good health heading in. Both of these teams want to run it. We've seen it out of Chip Kelly so far this year, and they've been a pretty good front runner. I've got some numbers in the games that they've been ahead and been able to front run. 41 rush attempts, 257 yards against Hawaii. 43 rush attempts, 246 against LSU. 49 last week for 224 against Stanford. All of those pretty solid averages, 4.6, 5.7, 6.3. So if you let UCLA get ahead of you, they're going to go to that ground game, and with the two-back system that they have, those are good backs. Getting Zach Charbonnet from Michigan as the number 2 has really been nice, and the offensive line's been good. So Arizona State wants to do the same. But there's not much edge situationally here because UCLA, like I say, comes in off of the Stanford win. ASU got right last week against Colorado, so they come in off of a big win. And these two teams, both in the Pac-12 South, this could be for, somewhat of an elimination game. It's hard to say that in September, but again, you're talking about a division where Utah has obviously spiraled a little bit.
Yeah, it's open, is what you're saying.
It's wide open because USC comes back last week and doesn't perform well against Oregon State. Who knows what USC is going to do? This could be for a spot in the Pac-12 championship game. The key separator in this one for me has been the UCLA run defense. It's been good. It's been good. This team overall, they're allowing, if I take the sack yardage out once again, which you really have to do in college football because otherwise the run numbers are a little misleading.
Yeah, they're skewed.
They've only allowed 80 yards, a little less than 80 yards per game on the ground. And it's not like teams aren't trying to run against them, but they've been stout at the point of attack, only 3.3 yards per carry. Arizona State's going to test that. This is a team, a macho-style team with Herm Edwards and his NFL coaching staff that's going to try it. Both pass rushes are strong here. When it gets to the Arizona State defense, I think that this is a huge step up in class just for that particular unit. ASU so far has played Southern Utah. Not going to pose much of a threat offensively against them. UNLV, without their starting quarterback, not much of a threat. They played BYU, actually outgained BYU in that game. And then, of course, you talked about the problems Colorado's had offensively. So none of those four teams are anywhere near the class of UCLA offensively. So we'll see what the ASU defense has. Are their numbers real, or is UCLA going to push them around a little bit? If you look at the total, I think you gave me 55.5 as the current.
Yeah.
ASU, all four games have gone under 55.5. They're only averaging 48.5 combined a game. UCLA, 3 of their 4 have gone over the 55.5. So you get a little difference there, and it comes down to pace. Arizona State, when you do the total plays numbers in their games, might be one of the slowest teams in college football so far. On average, 123 total plays per game. Very, very low for a college football game, 61.5 aside. UCLA up at 138, about 15 more. So, you wonder, you try and think as a head coach, will Chip Kelly try and press pace to get Arizona State out of their comfort zone? Arizona State will probably try to be pedestrian, get them out of a comfort zone. who can do what. The only
You want
team I've seen that scared UCLA was Fresno, and Fresno did it with Jake Hayner throwing the ball all over the lot.
they did. Do you want to take a guess on what I think Chip's going to do?
I think Chip's going to play fast.
I agree. I think they're going to try to speed Arizona State up. And it's so funny because if we could even guarantee that they were going to do that, you would think, well, the game's got to go over. But I don't think it's that simple because it could also just cause some rhythm issues with UCLA. Because, again, what they've been doing, controlling the ball when they're up, has worked really well for them. But if they're headed into this game thinking that they need to maybe do something different, maybe that's overthinking it. But at the same time, it's Chip Kelly. And I think that offense is equipped to move at a pretty fast pace throughout. Like, I mean, they've done it already. And this Arizona State team, we saw like against a team like Colorado, of course, Colorado has their issues offensively, but if you get anywhere into a game where you're running the ball, I mean, that front seven is going to be pretty stout for Arizona State. So I think UCLA is going to really try to push the pace in this one more than they have even in some prior games this season. I kind of lean over because I almost feel like this total is just kind of put right in the middle, right around that 55. Arizona State's gone under, like you said. UCLA's been going over, and it's kind of like pick your poison here. Like what side of this are you going to be on? And I have to lean with the over in this one.
Yeah, and I think you can make the case that the reason why Arizona State's games have been so low scoring is because they haven't played anybody who can play offense yet. And what will happen when they do? I think, Arizona State, like we say, has been good defensively, and this is a step up in class. What keeps coming back to me, Ben, is the way UCLA pushed LSU, an SEC team with 5-star recruits all over the place, the way they pushed them around and ran on them. And I know Arizona State wants to play that macho, tough front seven style, but UCLA might push them around too. I mean, you pushed LSU around. Is Arizona State that much more of a brick wall in their front seven than LSU is? I'm not sure. We're going to find out.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to find out. But I would think that Chip plays pace. And I cranked out all those numbers of how many times UCLA ran the ball when they were ahead. It's always in the high 40s. But even running the ball that much, immediate reaction to that is, well, that's grinding clock and that's a low-scoring game. But as we said, UCLA is playing overs while running the football, which lets you know that their run game gets chunk plays. It's not just 4 yards, 3. It's 18 yards, 16 yards, 8 yards. You know what I mean? So you can get over with a running game for sure. We'll see if Arizona State can stand up against it. It'll be a good game.
Yeah, the spread for me, I have to stay away from this one because I think it's a tight number. 3, it's kind of sitting on that number. Do you see any 3.5s anywhere?
I did this afternoon before we came on, but that may have changed. I haven't looked in the last couple of hours.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it might have changed right before that I got on and I saw that 3 because, yeah, it's a tough one. I could see it going to 3.5. I could also see it going to 2.5 the other way. It's gonna be right around the 3, I think, but it's hard to say, right? How the market looks at Arizona State on the road here.
I see a few of both. DraftKings I'm just trying to think of places that are available for a lot of the country. Still showing 3.5. Most Las Vegas places, Circa, South Point, Caesars, all holding 3.5s. I see some onlines down to 3. So it would look like, Ben, since it started at 4, that downward is the way it's going. So for those listening, again, if you're in that situation where you want the hook because you think it's going to be a field goal game, don't wait around. Get it now because otherwise, there is an advantage to betting early in the week a lot of times. You get the best of the numbers. So that's what we're seeing right now. We'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, this is going to be one of the last games of the night. So a good old Pac-12 after dark matchup. Do you stay up for those?
I do, and I live on the East Coast, which is really crazy because 2:30 in the morning is generally the time when everything's done. If Hawaii starts at midnight East Coast, it's 3:30 in the morning. So
yeah, you could almost go to bed at 8 and wake up and catch the second half if you woke up early enough. But that wouldn't make sense because there's games like this going on throughout the night. So, yeah, so those are the three that we're going to cover. Any other games that kind of caught your eye from maybe a line perspective from what it opened at or anything that you're looking forward to? Because there are a lot of big matchups this week.
There are.
I'm kind of staying away from a lot of those. I typically do that. But it makes it tougher because I think there's like 6 or 7 pretty premier games that, again, games I typically don't bet on. But anything else that you've been kind of eyeing and looking at?
Well, let's say this first off. Alabama, in some of the very, very early shops who open Sunday afternoon, open -20.
Yeah,
And it's
at
14
Circa,
and a
right?
half right now. There's been nothing but Ole Miss money
Yeah.
coming in. It
The Matt
continues to
Corral
come in.
show, right?
Yeah, I mean, Lane Kiffin against Nick Saban. And, Lane Kiffin took that job at Ole Miss for a reason. He wants to be the new SEC kingpin, and I don't know if his defense is quite there yet. But we saw a couple of nicks in the Alabama armor a couple of weeks ago against Florida, 31-29 final, which would suggest that maybe Ole Miss can score with them and try and match them point for point because they're not going to win any defensive contests. But I want to, a team that you and I talked about, and I think that we've both liked from the outset, and that's Arkansas. They did it again. They beat Texas A&M. There were a lot of non-believers that they could do it twice in a row, Texas and Texas A&M. But they're going to go to Georgia now, which are head coach Sam Pittman's old stomping grounds. He was the OL coach there before he took the Arkansas job. And I tell you what, Arkansas, Georgia looks really, really, really good. And maybe they get the best of Arkansas here. But, boy, oh, boy, that Arkansas team, all around, offense, defense, special teams, that's a good football team. It may be still undervalued a little bit, Ben. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, and I think I saw KJ Jefferson, right, is injured, but he came back. Is he most likely still going to play in this one from what you've been hearing?
From what I read about 2-3 hours ago, it's still a little bit up in the air, but it sounds more. A lot of times you have to read in between the lines with these coaches because they're so coy. They don't want the other side to
you
know
can't.
What's going on. It's so
you
hard.
really don't know until a few minutes before the game when you see him in shorts. To be sometimes right, like it's really hard to gauge. And I wanted to point this out though. I think this is one of the maybe sometimes with Alabama, but Arkansas is 4-0. They're ranked 8th. And I know we don't look too much at rankings and all that, but it is interesting to see they are ranked 8th facing Georgia, who's ranked 2nd. They're 18.5-point dogs. But that speaks to Georgia's defense. I mean, they're legit. I mean, the defense, Daniels on the other side of the ball. I think they're actually my favorite right now to win it all, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that crowd is becoming larger every week. Now, it could change real quick if Alabama goes out and dominates Ole Miss, and then we'll be right back to roll tide.
Yeah.
But Clemson has played themselves out of the picture, right? And when you start trying, Ohio State for the time being has played themselves out of the picture. So all that's really left are Georgia and Alabama. To tell you the truth, I mean, who else are we looking at from a national standpoint?
Oklahoma's looked pretty underwhelming.
Right. Another one who's
Pac-12 is a mess. I mean, I guess
Big Ten,
Oregon maybe, but Oregon they'd have to win out. So they would have to. Yeah, it's just there's not that many teams really in contention unless you get someone out of the Big Ten. Iowa, I mean, these are teams that are going to be in the picture, but I think Iowa offensively, maybe if they played their way into the playoff, but they're not going to be able to hang with a lot of these teams. I think but hey, if Iowa goes undefeated, right, they're probably in.
Yeah,
I guess.
Typical Iowa last week to lay 23.5 and score 24 for the whole game. That's generally the MO of that team. Steve Adazio's group.
That was probably the best performance of the year.
They played them well. Had the lead at halftime.
Yeah. So if Alabama, well, I'm actually showing a few 14s on the board. It looks like it's at 14.5 most spots, but I'm seeing a few 14s on the board. I kind of like Alabama at -14.
At some point, you have to come back with Alabama. If they drive this thing down to 13.5, you definitely have to try Alabama.
Yeah, because the way I kind of look at it, right, when Florida had a close game with Alabama, it's almost like, well, hey, maybe this Alabama team is susceptible, right? But I almost feel like that was the spot to lay the points on the dog. I don't know. I think Young is going to be fine, and 14. I know another ranked team that's undefeated, but it seems like that might be a good spot to take a look at. I have to look deeper into that one. Do you have a lean on that one?
In Alabama, Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I would think just from a value standpoint, you have to look at Alabama right now because the comparison between defenses is night and day. It would seem to me that Alabama's going to score whenever they want to score. Or even though Ole Miss's defense is improved, but it's not improved to that level.
Yeah.
And also, we should, in all fairness, we should point out that when Alabama played Florida, they had linebacker issues. Two of their top guys banged up. Now, only one sat out that game, but still, they were playing a little bit injured in that second tier of defense. Florida took advantage with the running quarterback. Matt Corral certainly could take advantage. He can run just as well as Emory Jones can run. It's not the same style offense as Dan Mullen, but I can't see taking Ole Miss at 20. I could, but when you get down this low, it just seems to me Alabama, will win the game by 17 or more.
Well, I mean, the college football fan, if you're not a Bama fan, who really is cheering for Bama here?
Right.
And I think that money kind of goes over to Ole Miss here, right?
Everybody wants to see him get knocked off for sure.
Yeah.
But then guys like me and you that are purchasing tickets on these games, if we have Alabama, we're big fans of Alabama on Saturday if we have that.
And then that first half line's probably going to be, I'm going to guess 7.5, 8 at least, right? You're not going to get a 7 first half, but.
And I don't have those numbers in front of me, Ben, but if you go through those Alabama first half numbers for the past couple of, it's like just walking up to your ATM and taking money out.
I think it's upwards of like 64%, which is
they've been
pretty insane, right? So, yeah, and it's gotten to the point. I was talking to someone about this where, it's predicated off the full game, right? And then you kind of play backwards where you say like, okay, full game's 14.5. Maybe we'll take 60% of that. That's the first half line, right? And it seems at times the books have tried to adjust a little bit where they're like, man, maybe we need to inflate that number a little bit. And not the full game, just the first half line. But you only can do that so much because then you get in a position where it doesn't make sense to have like a line like of, let's say, I don't know, plus 10 in this scenario. Or plus 10 for Ole Miss first half. That makes 0 sense, right? You could never do that. But, I mean, I guess the books are saying, hey, if people want to take advantage of that, that's fine because the majority of the handle is still going to be on the full game.
Yeah, and generally speaking, the larger the full game point spread, the more inflated the first half will be under the simple theory that a large favorite will take the lead and let off the gas. So we're not going to let you have a good price in the first half because that's when they're going to have all their starters in, and we'll jack up the price there. So when you get down into the more competitive games, -5, -6, generally you do see we'll just take half of that and make that the first half line, a 6.
Oh, totally, yeah. But then when you get up to, it's we've seen with Alabama over the years, they'll have a spread of 42, and then you'll see like a 27.
Right.
28.
No, absolutely.
And they'll still cover it.
and then Nick will let off the gas in the fourth quarter, and he won't cover the full game. But if you played first half, you already cashed, so you don't care anymore.
Yeah. All right. One last question for you. We're going to switch it up a little bit here and talk about an NFL game. I just want to get your quick 60-second thoughts on this one. Ravens Broncos. I'll be at the game. I know you're a Broncos fan. What do you think?
Yeah, boy, it's hard not to be impressed early, despite the fact that the competition level's been garbage, right? I mean, Jacksonville, Giants, Jets, okay.
And all those
Uh,
teams haven't won a game.
None of them have won a
Yeah.
game. For the Broncos, they have the defensive weaponry to make Lamar Jackson human, I would think. And from there, losing KJ Hamler hurts, right? The wide receiving core is down to Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton.
Hmm.
But I think Teddy Bridgewater is so good at keeping teams in games. God, he
Not
just
turning the
covers
ball
point
over.
spreads. Oh
That's
man,
the
he
first
covers
step.
point spreads. So
Yeah.
it's a near pick'em game. Maybe it's the fan in me thinking Denver can pull this one off. Haven't been fully impressed with Baltimore's defense yet. Real impressed with what Vic Fangio has done on the defensive side. So
I actually think Denver can put up points if need be. They just haven't had to do it, right? So I kind of lean over, believe it or not. It's coming down, and maybe that's very contrarian. I think it's at 43, maybe 43 and a half. But I do believe that Lamar is going to make plays. They're going to put up points. And here's a very one-off type of handicap here. But you have to remember, both these field goal kickers are two of the best in the league. They're going to kick a lot of field goals, which with the total around like 44, those start to add up a little bit, right? More times than not, you get a total of 50 in the NFL, and a field goal is not going to get it done. But I think you could see a lot of field goals in this one, a lot of points. It's going to be a close game, and I think ultimately it's going to end up as a pick 'em. I do think that's where it's going to settle.
yeah, it'd be hard to disagree with the over two, Ben, especially after I just saw, which is surprising to me, quarterbacks average distance of pass attempt this year. Teddy Bridgewater ranks third out of 32 starting quarterbacks, third in the NFL in pushing the ball downfield. His average pass, they're throwing the ball vertically, which against Baltimore you want to do. The secondary is
Yeah.
suspect.
No Marcus Peters. Yep, he's out.
So the over
Which
at
is
that price.
how
would be hard to
ironic
argue.
is that, Rob? Because the whole Drew Lock Bridgewater thing was that Drew Lock was the guy to push the ball, and Bridgewater couldn't do that. I find that hilarious, personally.
I guess ball security is number one, and we'll see guys like Noah Fant who can get down the middle of the field. They've got pretty good weapons. We'll see if they go out and get themselves another wide receiver here. But
Yeah. Actually, I think they did pick someone up more. I think he was an ex-Raider. I don't even know. To be honest, I don't even know too much about him. But, I mean, I think it's more emergency, right? Because we're down to like 4. So someone's got to suit up. So we'll see. Well, I have to run, Rob. I appreciate it once again. Best of luck to you this weekend. And we will definitely catch you throughout the week on some of your other shows. And I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ben. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll see you later.
All right. Take care.